Let me be very direct with you. If you cannot make money while you are unconscious, you will be working until your body forces you to stop. I do not say this to frighten you. I say this because most people hear that sentence and they nod their head and they go back to checking their email. They understand the words. They do not understand the warning. This is not inspiration. This is arithmetic. We need to talk about the most elegant prison ever constructed. No bars, no guards. Free food. They even give you a parking spot with your name on it. We call it employment. And right now, most of you are sitting inside it completely voluntarily, wondering why you feel stuck. Here is what you are actually doing every single day. You wake up. You get dressed. You drive to a building that someone else owns. You sit in a chair that someone else bought. You work on a problem that someone else defined. And at the end of 2 weeks, they hand you a piece of paper that says, here is what your time was worth to us. You think this is normal. The wealthy think this is tragic. Why? Because time is the only inventory that cannot be restocked. Think about that carefully. Imagine you had a warehouse. Every morning, 24 boxes appear on the shelf. That is it. No more deliveries, no back orders. 24 boxes. Once they are gone, the warehouse closes until tomorrow. That is your day. That is everyone's day. The difference between the rich and everyone else is not intelligence. It is what they put in those boxes. An employee fills every box with someone else's priorities. An owner fills some boxes with systems that fill the rest of the boxes for them. You can be the best doctor in the city. You can charge fees that make people wins. But the moment you stop showing up, the revenue stops breathing. You're not wealthy. There's a massive difference between the two. And most people spend their entire careers confusing one for the other. Now, where does this confusion come from? It was installed in you. Deliberately think about what school actually trained you to do. Sit still for 6 hours. Memorize what the authority figure said. Ask for permission before you speak. Ask for permission before you leave the room. Never question the test. Never rewrite the rules. Complete the task as assigned and wait for your grade. I am not being cynical. I am reading you the job description because that is exactly what it was. The modern school system was not designed in a library by philosophers thinking about human potential. It was designed in Prussia to produce obedient soldiers and efficient factory workers. People who follow instructions without friction. People who show up on time, do what they are told, and do not ask uncomfortable questions about who owns the factory. They taught you everything except the things that actually build wealth. They never showed you a balance sheet. They never explained what equity means. They never told you that debt can be a tool instead of a punishment. They certainly never told you that the goal of a smart person is to build something that works without them. Instead, they handed you a diploma and pointed you toward a salary. And the salary, I want you to understand, is a very sophisticated trap. Nassim Taleb once said the 3 most dangerous addictions in the world are heroin, carbohydrates, and a monthly salary. He was being precise, not funny. A salary works on your brain the same way a controlled substance does. It delivers a predictable hit. Same amount, same day. Every month your nervous system relaxes, your ambition quiets down, you stop hunting because the bowl is always full. A wolf that does not know when it will eat next stays sharp, it reads the terrain, it moves with purpose. A dog in a comfortable kennel does none of those things. It sleeps, it waits, it was ever built to run. Most people are very comfortable dogs, and the cruelest part of that comfort is this. The person who owns the kennel can close it at any time. We have watched this happen in every economic disruption in modern history. The loyal employee, 30 years of service. Good reviews, never late, never difficult. And then the company restructures, or the technology shifts, or the market turns, and he is 55 years old, sitting across from a recruiter with a resume that says he is very good at executing other people's idea. And nobody is currently hiring for that. This is not a story about bad luck. It is a story about a strategy that worked perfectly until it did not, and left nothing behind when it stopped working. So today we dismantle the strategy. We are not going to talk about motivation. We are going to talk about mathematics. We're going to look at why the tax code is written to penalize your labor and subsidize your capital. We are going to understand why inflation is always working against workers and always working for owners. And we are going to talk about how to sever the rope that ties your income to your hours. You do not need to quit your job tomorrow. But you need to quit the identity today. Stop thinking of yourself as a worker who belongs to a company. Start thinking of yourself as an independent enterprise that is currently serving one client. Same desk, same paycheck, completely different trajectory. The door is already unlocked. We are just going to show you where it is. Most people believe the system is rigged. They are correct. What they get wrong is the mechanism. They assume it is corruption, backroom deals, the wrong handshakes. It is far simpler and far more ruthless than that. It is rigged by the tax code. It is rigged by inflation timing. And it is rigged by the difference between linear and exponential math. The tax penalty open the tax code of any developed country and read it slowly. The message is written in plain language. If you know what you are looking for, the government does not want you to be a salaried worker. It wants you to be an investor. How do I know this? Because it taxes those two activities at completely different rates. If you wake up, get dressed, drive to an office, and earn a salary, the government takes between 30 and 40% before you see a single dollar. Income tax, payroll tax, social contributions, gone. Before you buy groceries, before you make a single decision about your own money. Now, if instead you allocate capital, if you own stocks, businesses, real estate, the government taxes those earnings at a dramatically lower rate, sometimes half, sometimes less. I once mentioned publicly that my assistant paid a higher effective tax rate than I did. People assumed I was being arrogant. I was being informative. I was telling you the rules of a game you're playing without knowing the rule book. The system does not punish success. It punishes the specific method of earning. Work with your time and you are penalized. Work with your capital and you are rewarded. The government needs capital in the economy to build companies, fund innovation, and create jobs. It does not need more people sitting safely at desks, producing no new assets. So it designed the incentive structure accordingly. If you want to keep more of what you produce, you have to change what you are producing. Stop selling hours. Start accumulating equity. The inflation lag, this one operates quietly, which is why most people never see it happening to them. When governments expand the money supply, prices rise. Everyone knows that. What most people do not know is that prices do not rise evenly or simultaneously. There's a sequence that's designed. Not conspiratorially, just structurally, to benefit asset owners and punish wage earners. Here is the order. Asset prices move first. Stocks go up. Property goes up. The person who owns those things watches their net worth expand immediately. Then consumer prices follow, food, energy, rent, all of it climbs and lasts. Sometimes a year or two later, wages catch up. Your employer does not voluntarily adjust your compensation. The morning inflation data is released. He waits, he watches, he deliberates. By the time that 3% raise lands in your account, you have already absorbed 12 months of higher prices. You're running a race where the finish line accelerates every time you get close to it. Asset owners are on the opposite side of that equation. They are holding things that reprice upward automatically. Workers are holding labor, which reprices upward reluctantly, slowly, and only after everything else already has. As long as your primary financial asset is your time, you will always be on the losing side of inflation. This is not an opinion, it is the math, linear versus exponential. This is the argument. Selling time is linear math. 1 hour equals 1 unit of income. 10 hours equals 10 units. The relationship is clean, consistent, and absolutely brutal in its ceiling. You cannot work 25 hours in a 24-hour day, which means your maximum income is fixed by a physical constant. You can become more skilled. You can negotiate a higher rate, but the architecture of the model is unchanged. It is mathematically impossible to become genuinely wealthy by selling hours, because you will always run out of hours before you run out of things you need to buy. Building ownership is exponential math. When I hold equity in a company, that company generates revenue every single day, independent of my presence. It serves customers in time zones I am not awake in. It processes transactions while I'm reading a book. My return is not connected to my effort. It is connected to the quality of the system I own a piece of. A surgeon is brilliant. The training is extraordinary. The skill is real, but if that surgeon stops operating, the income stops immediately. If that same surgeon builds a healthcare technology company, the platform continues processing appointments, generating revenue, and scaling, while the surgeon is anywhere on earth doing anything at all. The shift is not from working harder to being lazy. The shift is from selling your output to owning a process, from being paid for what you do to being paid for what you build. If you do not make this transition, you are one bad diagnosis, one injury, one unexpected circumstance away from complete financial collapse. Not because you failed, because the model you chose has no resilience built into it. We have now proven with reasonable mathematical certainty that selling time is a losing long-term strategy. So the honest question is, why do educated, intelligent, ambitious people keep doing it? Why does someone with a graduate degree from a serious university work furiously to land a job that pays them by the hour? The answer is not stupidity. The answer is neuroscience. The addiction of certainty. Go back to Taleb's observation. Heroin, carbohydrates, monthly salary. The comparison is more clinical than comedic. The human brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It is obsessed with pattern recognition because patterns historically meant safety. In our evolutionary past, predictability was survival. The unknown was where predators lived. Our regular paycheck is the purest form of financial predictability available. Same number, same date. Guaranteed. Every 2 weeks, your brain receives a signal. You are safe. The threat has been neutralized, stand down. Over time, your entire life architecture organizes itself around that signal. The mortgage requires it, the car payment requires it, the private school tuition requires it. And as these obligations accumulate, the terror of interrupting the signal grows disproportionately. You are not just addicted to the paycheck. You are addicted to the entire lifestyle that the paycheck makes possible. This is how the mechanism works, not through force, through comfort. Give someone just enough certainty to make uncertainty feel unbearable, and they will never voluntarily choose risk again. If I deposited $8 million into your account this afternoon, you would resign tomorrow morning. Not next month, tomorrow. That single fact tells you everything important about your relationship. With your job, you do not love the work. You are dependent on the structure, and every year that dependency deepens, the cost of breaking it rises, and the probability of ever breaking it falls. I have watched extraordinarily gifted people who could have built remarkable things, accept a senior position at a prestigious firm in their late 20s and simply never leave. Not because the work fulfilled them, because the lifestyle calcified around the salary. And eventually the salary became load-bearing. Remove it and everything collapses. They traded the possibility of everything for the guarantee of enough. And 20 years later, they have the lifestyle and none of the freedom. The business performance. Watch how people in corporate environments describe themselves. How are you? Absolutely buried, non-stop. I haven't slept properly in weeks. Said with the quiet satisfaction of someone displaying a trophy. In the employee world, exhaustion is evidence of importance. A full calendar means you matter. A packed inbox means you are in demand. In the owner's world, this is a diagnosis, not an achievement. Look at how genuinely wealthy people structure their time. Blank mornings, long lunches, extended periods with nothing scheduled. Not because they're idle, but because they understand that thinking is the highest value activity available to them. And thinking requires space. If you spend every hour of every day chopping firewood, you will never have an afternoon free to invent a chainsaw. The employee is always chopping, always moving visibly, demonstrably, and generating the same output year after year because the model never changes. Business is often a sophisticated defense mechanism. If your calendar is full, you never have to sit alone with the uncomfortable question of whether what you are doing is actually building toward anything. Activity becomes the substitute for strategy. Motion becomes the substitute for direction. Stop measuring your value by how tired you are at the end of the week. The title as currency here is the final chain, and it is the most invisible one. Companies cannot pay you what you would generate if you work for yourself. The math simply does not allow it. So they compensate the gap with something that costs them nothing but means a great deal to you. Status. Vice president, senior director, principal, managing partner. These words on a business card do something powerful to the human ego. They create identity. They create belonging. They create a story you tell yourself about who you are and what you have achieved. And they cost the company absolutely nothing to give you. I have seen people remain in genuinely miserable situations. Wrong culture, wrong compensation, wrong future. Purely because the exit required surrendering a title, not money, a title. Words on a card that no bank in the world will accept as collateral. When I stepped away from managing outside capital in the 1960s, I walked away from considerable prestige. Wall Street thought I had lost my mind. Here was this person leaving the game just as the game was getting interesting. But I had decided some years earlier that I would only consult the internal scorecard. My own honest assessment of whether what I was building had actual value, and completely ignored the external one. The external scorecard is what other people think of your title, your office, your firm, your car. The internal scorecard is whether you're actually moving toward the life you intended to build. Most people are optimizing for the external scorecard while losing badly on the internal one. And they will not discover this until they're too old to correct it. You have to be willing to be unimpressive for a period. Small title, no title, building something that looks insignificant from the outside. This phase is necessary. The oak tree looks ridiculous next to the skyscraper for the first 20 years. That does not mean the oak tree is losing. We have spent considerable time diagnosing the problem. Now, let us install the solution. There are 3 principles. They are not complicated. They require discipline, not genius. Equity is the only game, write this down somewhere, permanent. You will not build real wealth by renting out your time. It has never happened at scale. It will not happen for you. The mechanism simply does not support the outcome. The fundamental shift is from earning income to accumulating ownership. When I began investing seriously, I thought about every dollar I had as a small employee. That dollar could go to a restaurant and come home dead, having done nothing but provide one evening of comfort. Or that dollar could go to work, buy a fractional ownership in a business, generate a return, recruit additional dollars, and over years, that single dollar could become 10, which could become 100. Most people murder their financial soldiers. They spend them the moment they arrive. New phone, vacation, slightly nicer car. The owner psychology is different than Nolan's. Every dollar that passes through your hands is a hiring decision. Are you sending this dollar to retirement or are you sending it to work? You do not need to launch a company to begin owning equity. The public stock market is the most extraordinary wealth creation tool in human history, precisely because it allows ordinary people to own pieces of extraordinary businesses. I did not build Coca-Cola. I did not sit in those meetings or manage those factories. I simply recognized that the business was exceptional and bought a piece of it. Every can opened anywhere on earth since that day has moved a fraction of a cent in my direction. That is ownership. That is what you are trying to build. A lot of bigger salary. Leverage without asking anyone for most of human history. If you wanted to scale your impact beyond your own 2 hands, you had 2 options. Hire people, which is expensive and complicated, or borrow capital, which is risky and requires someone to believe in you enough to lend it. These were the only 2 levers available. Something changed in the last 20 years that most people have not fully processed. A third form of leverage appeared, one that carries no interest rate, requires no employees, and needs no bank's approval. We call it zero marginal cost. Leverage lives in 2 places, software and meteorite. A program once. It runs 1,000,000 times. The 10,000th execution costs you nothing more than the first. Make a video, write an article, record a course. The first person who encounters it requires your full creative effort. The 1,000,000th person requires nothing from you at all. You're not there, you're somewhere else entirely. The asset is working independently. This is genuinely new in history. It is also genuinely underused by most people who are aware of it, because they are too busy executing their salaried work to build anything that does not require them. If you are currently competing in the modern economy by selling your hours, you are bringing a handsaw to a lumber mill. The tools available to you right now, free platforms, open source software, global distribution at no cost, represent a leverage opportunity that the wealthiest person alive in 1990 could not have accessed. And most people are ignoring it entirely because it does not come with a benefits package. Think in systems, not solution. The final distinction between an employee mindset and an owner mindset is not about work ethic or intelligence. It is about what you do when a problem appears. An employee encounters a problem and asks, how do I fix this? An owner encounters a problem and asks, how do I build something that fixes this category of problem permanently? Without me, look at McDonald's. Sit with this for a moment. Is the food exceptional? Number, is it even particularly good? That is debatable. Is the system exceptional? Completely. The system is so well constructed, so thoroughly documented, so deliberately simplified that a 17-year-old working their first job can execute it flawlessly on day 3. The genius was not in the recipe. The genius was in removing the need for genius. Your goal is to do that to your own income, document what you do, then automate what can be automated, then delegate what remains, then move up one level and repeat. If you are a freelancer doing every task personally, answering every email, handling every client, you do not have a business. You have a job with no HR department and no paid leave. The business cannot be an asset if it stops functioning the moment you take a vacation. The test is simple. Can this income stream run for 2 weeks without a decision from you? If the answer is no, you have not built a system, you have built a dependency. I have ownership stakes in businesses I have not physically entered in years. They do not send me questions, they send me results. That is the goal, not to be the hardest working person in the room, to have built something that no longer requires you to be in the room. You understand the trap, you understand the math, you understand the psychology. Now the practical question, how do you get out without destroying the stability you currently depend on? Carefully, strategically, without drama. The Saturday morning CE or Ju. The most common version of this escape goes badly. Person reaches a breaking point, has a frustrating interaction with management, sends a resignation email they will partially regret, walks out with no runway, no income, and a startup idea they have not tested with a single paying customer. This is not a strategy. This is an emotional event with financial consequences. The correct approach is boring. Keep your job. Your employer is currently your primary investor. They are funding your cost of living while you build your actual future. That framing is important because it changes the relationship. They are not your captor. They are your unwitting sponsor. What changes is not your employment. Status, what changes is your relationship with your remaining time. Most employees spend their weekends recovering. Friday night through Sunday afternoon is a decompression exercise. Drinks, sport, rest, preparation to re-enter the cycle on Monday. The body recharges, so the employer can extract from it again next week. The owner mindset treats that same window differently. Friday to Monday is the actual job. That is when the side business gets built. That is when the investments get researched. That is when the content gets created, the code gets written, the system gets one iteration better. You continue this until a specific threshold is crossed. Your part-time income exceeds your full-time expenses. This number, whatever it is for your life, is the most important financial milestone. It is the moment the employer loses leverage over you. You do not quit immediately. You do not make any announcement. You simply walk into the office knowing that you are there because you have evaluated the situation and chosen to be there. Not because the alternative is crisis. Refuse the promotion. This is the test that catches most people at the final stage. Just as your external project begins gaining traction, just as the escape becomes visible, the system makes its counteroffer, a promotion, additional compensation, an expanded role with a title that sounds impressive at dinner parties. Everything inside you will want to accept it. Your ego will argue for it. Your family might encourage it. It represents validation from the institution you have been performing for. It is a trap, not because the money is bad, but because of what the money costs. A promotion at this specific stage almost always demands more of your mental energy and your creative hours. Precisely the resources you are now deploying. They're offering you a larger cage because they have detected, consciously or not, that you are moving toward the door. The ladder is real. The rungs are real. The problem is where the ladder is leaning. A person can spend 30 years climbing with tremendous diligence and skill and arrive at the top at a position of maximum dependency with no assets beneath them. Be a completely adequate employee. Give the company what the compensation fairly demands, but give your best thinking, your best energy, your most creative hours. Give those to the project that belongs to you. I want to give you one final exercise. It is not a spreadsheet. It does not require a calculator. Imagine yourself at 90 years old, sitting out some. The body is not going to do much more building. The career is long finished. The decisions are all already made. You are simply reviewing what happened in that chair, in that quiet. What do you think will occupy your mind? Will you be thinking about the promotion you did not pursue, the performance review that stung a little, the company car you drove at 35, the corner office you eventually earned, or will you be thinking about the thing you almost built and didn't? A decade you spent preparing to take a risk that you kept postponing until the window had quietly closed. The years that accumulated while you waited for the right moment, and the right moment never quite arrived because you had structured your life to make risk feel catastrophic. Time is the only truly non-renewable resource. I have more money than I can spend in several lifetimes, and I cannot purchase a single additional hour of the years that have already passed. Not one. That is a strange thing to sit with. You have today. You have a window that will not remain open indefinitely, not because of age alone, but because every year the obligations accumulate, the lifestyle expectations rise, and the psychological cost of changing direction increases. The cage is not locked. I want to be very clear about that. It has never been locked. I want to be very clear. The only mechanism keeping it closed is the story you have been telling yourself since you were 17 years old about what work means, what safety means, and what you are allowed to want. You can keep selling time. That is a legitimate choice, and it will provide a legitimate life. But if you want something else, if there is a version of your future that does not end with someone else's name on the building, then the moment to begin is not when conditions are perfect. the conditions will never be perfect.